Hey everyone, my name is Dom Ramirez. I'm a user interface designer and a front-end developer. I'm also a partner at Pixel Inline, which is a 30-person design and development agency here in Boise. So today we're going to take an overall look at Meteor, and if we're lucky, then we'll get to, from scratch, build an application and deploy it, and you should be able to walk away playing with the application. So to start things off, I want to ask, who knows of Meteor? Okay. Does anybody have a working knowledge of JavaScript? Well, I should say, does everybody have a working knowledge of JavaScript? Okay, if you don't, this talk's going to be a little bit hard to follow. If you're up for the challenge, that's fine. But if not, then you're certainly welcome to stay for as long as you'd like, and if another talk is more suited for you, then that's fine too. How about a working knowledge of MongoDB? Show of hands. Okay. Great. So who's building their own app right now for personal or public use? All right. Are any of you using Meteor? Oh, look at that. Okay, great. Cool. So, first let's talk about what Meteor is. Meteor is a JavaScript app framework. It's built on Node. It uses MongoDB. It's super dynamic, and it's a very comprehensive ecosystem of packages. It's generally good for prototyping, minimum viable products, and internal applications or business logic applications. I've used it in several different applications specifically for that purpose. It may not be good for replatforming a massive code base, high-profile applications, or big data applications. And I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. So the basic components of Meteor include a build system, a package manager, a front-end MVC framework, front-end database access. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Reactive templating, a security toolbox, user account management, and Cordova app support, along with a lot of other goodies, all of which we cannot cover during this talk, but we'll do our best to get through as much as we can. Okay, so does anybody have any questions so far? No? Okay, great. So, like I said, I want to build an application more or less from scratch. I've already put together a blueprint for the application, but I want to build and deploy this Meteor application right here on the spot before the talk is over. And if we have to, we'll switch into a repository where I already have the application built. But let's hope that that doesn't happen. Okay, so the app that we're going to build is going to be called Beverage++, which is not a very good name for an extremely simple app. We have one view, two states. Basically, a user is going to see a list of categories of drinks and a count of how many of those drinks have been consumed. And if they create an account and sign in, they're going to be able to increment those drinks. So you can see here on the user logged in view that the user has incremented the cups of coffee sipped, and therefore it's gone from 24 to 25. Simple enough? Great. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to want to do when you're making a Meteor app is you're going to want to download Meteor. Fancy that. So let's go to meteor.com. We're going to click the install button, easy peasy. If you're on a Mac or Linux, then you can use this curl. Otherwise, there's an installer for Windows. It's just an exe, it goes, it runs, it's great. So I obviously already have that installed on the system, and you don't have to wait for it. You will, in fact, have to wait for me to create a test project. So once you've got Meteor installed on your computer, you'll be able to go into a directory and go Meteor create, and then the name of the app that you want to create, which is arbitrary. So I'm going to say bev plus plus. All right. Now we're selecting package versions. There are some predefined packages that come with every base Meteor install. We'll talk about those a little bit more later. And okay, we're good to go. So I just need to I change directories into bev and then run the command Meteor. This is going to take a second the first time. It's going to be starting up an instance of MongoDB, selecting package versions, which packages are going to update pretty automatically, which is a lot of fun. You can also force them to save a particular version, but that's well out of the scope of this talk. Yeah, so I'm just going to let this finish here so you can see what it looks like when it's done. Yeah, now, okay, so you'll see that when you create a Meteor project, they start you off with some sample code. And inside of that sample code, we have this page of helpers, which may not make much sense to you, but you'll see meteor.isClient and meteor.isServer going on there. That's pretty fun. Because I guess we could talk about this a little bit more. Meteor, in fact, runs on both the client and the server in JavaScript. Not only does it run in both cases, but you can choose in which context the code is going to run in a few very simple ways and share sometimes the exact same files in both contexts. They'll also give you, to start out, just a simple HTML file. And you'll see that the file structure of this isn't as simple as it would be if you were just putting together a static HTML document and shipping it out and validating it. It's a little bit weird. It's minimalistic, and then outside of the body tag, we've got this weird template tag, which will be a little bit more obvious later. But to start, I'm willing to bet, in fact, yes, our app is running at localhost port 3000. And so let's switch to that, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is just the sample code. Welcome to Meteor, and then they've got a template being included here called hello. This is the hello template. There's a button that says click me, and you've pressed the button, and then some sort of variable times, right? And if I click this button, what do you know? It increments. Easy peasy. Now, we're going to get rid of all of that. And I'm not going to worry about safe delete because it doesn't sound quite that safe. I am, however, going to copy this sample code that I have prepared over. And basically, my intention was just to drop in a file structure and some static HTML and CSS so that we wouldn't be spending too much time dealing with things that are a little bit easier to get. Okay, so yeah, let's go to the Meteor documentation and talk about why I laid out my files like this. Okay, so first off, if you go to docs.meteor.com, there's a pretty comprehensive API doc that will show you, I mean, it's huge, but it'll show you pretty much all of the essential functions of Meteor. There's a lot that isn't in here. You can find that around the Meteor site, or you'll also see a little bit later I have recommended documentation in this Google Doc that I'm going to make available after this talk. Anyway, so structuring your app. Because Meteor runs on both the client and the server, they have decided to have special directories wherein files in these directories are treated a little bit differently. So we have the client directory, which is only run on the client. This is the place where you put CSS files and JavaScript files and template files that are going to run on the client. All of the HTML and CSS and JavaScript that's inside the client folder is going to be compiled and output as a single file when you finally deploy, although they don't combine or minify everything while you're in debug mode. And then there's the server folder, which, as you may have guessed, only runs on the server. Simple enough. Secret protected code should go there. And then there's the public folder, which should have your static assets, your robots.txt. It should have images, videos, fonts, whatever. Anything that doesn't need to be dynamic and does need to be served readily available to the public. Then you've got the private folder, which is virtually the opposite of that. Generally static files, like say if you have a set of transaction keys for a merchant processor, you might put those in a JSON file and drop them in the private folder. They can be accessed on the server side through the Assets API, which there's a bit more about that there. But I was just using that the other day, and it's handy. And so there are a couple of others in here, but I'm not going to get into them too deeply. Anything outside of these special folders are run on both the client and the server, which sometimes will cause you bugs as you're getting the hang of the system. But it tends to be pretty handy, and one of the files that we use will in fact be running on both the client and the server. So you can see here we have our client directory. In here we have styles, views, and helpers.js, which is kind of a global controller that I'll talk about a little bit later. In styles, I put a CSS file. Let's not worry about that. Inside views, this is how I like to break it out, but I like to start with layouts, which is going to be the high-level HTML, things that are going to be used on sort of every page, or at least most pages, and is going to be right under the body tag. And then within that, we would have pages. Obviously, if you go to yourwebsite.com/about or yourwebsite.com/home, these are different pages. And so that's the content that should be displayed here. And then blocks, which blocks are things that could be used on multiple pages, could be used in different contexts, could be repeated on a single page. Just smaller elements that can have more reusable contexts. And then we have this folder called lib, which we didn't talk about before. It's my own creation. It runs on both the client and the server because Meteor doesn't recognize any special properties for it. And then, by the way, all these JavaScript files are empty. This one has some comments that we're going to copy and paste later. But aside from this directory, we're going to be writing all the code that we need to run this application all on our own. Okay. And then we have this server directory, which, as you know, runs only on the server. And this is how we're going to have protected code. which will be handy if we don't want people to hack our application. Right, and then we've got a gitignore file, of course, that's going to keep me from committing my IntelliJ file. And we have an HTML file. Now, the HTML file, like you saw in the sample code that was generated through Meteor, the HTML file is a little bit less important than it might be in a lot of other applications. Basically, each instance of the head tag or the body tag that runs anywhere in your code base is automatically going to be concatenated and added to the real document that the users view in their browser. The same is true, as I said a moment ago, of all of the CSS or Sass even, if you've added that package, and all of the JavaScript files. They're all just sort of compiled and added in here. So I could create 12 copies of this page, modify the header slightly in each case, and have all of those changes included in the final application without having to link them together at all. I won't do that because I have no good reason to, but you've been warned. Okay. So now let's talk about data a little bit. Meteor uses MongoDB, and who does not know what MongoDB does? Okay, let me go over that really, really quick. So MongoDB is a database system. It's comparable in stack to MySQL, but instead of being a relational database that has rigid tables, columns, MongoDB is a non-relational database, which means you can sort of throw all of the information that you want into these buckets and pull it out whenever you want to, and in some cases query for it in mildly efficient ways, sometimes more efficient for geodata than other things, but I won't get into that. And MongoDB, in fact, has a very fluid, simple, and flexible way of managing the data inside of it. Granted, you should always start with a schema, and you should always know what your data model is going to look like, but MongoDB doesn't require that of you. Although that's not what's great about it. The great thing about MongoDB is that it's all about JavaScript. It's my favorite part. So this is a record in the database. Records go into collections, and then the database can have multiple collections. So this is a user. Her name is Sue. Her age is 26. Her status is A for some reason. And then the groups that she's in are news and sports, and there could be thousands of these records in the database. As you can see, Al is 18, status D. I won't get too far into this stuff, but if we were inserting Sue into our system, we would, with the JavaScript API, run db.users, that's the name of the collection, .insert, and it would drop this record into the database for perpetual storage. So Meteor uses that same API, and it in fact exposes that API to the front end, which is fantastic. So let's head back to our app, which should have just about nothing in it. That is precisely correct. Nothing is in the app. Good. So here on our collections.js file, which I chose to name it that. You can name it whatever you want to, or you can have it in a different file. You can have all of this stuff in the same file. Doesn't matter. I like to do db equals, and then open an object literal, and then run categories and new mongo.collection. And I'll name the collection categories. So this end is the end that will actually create a collection in the database, and this is just a variable from which I can access it. Now, the reason I like to put this in an object is so that I can add as many as I want to, and they'll all adopt the same db.collectionName.methodName syntax. Also, the reason I don't have a var keyword on this is because every Meteor file is wrapped in a closure. So it's as if I had function It's as if I had a closure around all of these elements, and if I had run var db equals etc., then that code wouldn't have been accessible outside of this file itself. So that's just a little gotcha with regards to Meteor. And some things like the database I do want in the global scope, so I put it there. Be careful about that. I usually won't have more than 3 namespaces in the global scope in any size of Meteor project. Okay, so we now have db.categories, and just for fun, and so you don't have to watch for too long, I have sort of a basic data model, 3 properties. One of them is an icon, is a string. One of them is a label, which is also a string, and then one of them is count, which is an integer. And we're going to insert 3 of these guys into the database. Great. Bam. Now we can do db.categories.find, and that gives us a cursor. And then we'll also do .fetch, which instead of the cursor actually gives us an array that we can use in real life for reals. And we can see that each of these objects that were passed through are now available there, and they'll be available in perpetuity until we change them. Fun. Okay. Cool. So obviously there are problems with having with having the database propagated throughout both the client and the server. We're going to talk about those later, but for the time being, do we have any questions about MongoDB, about collections, about what I'm doing? Anything? Great. Okay. So let's talk about templates next. So I'm actually going to go to this handout that I've put together for this presentation and pop open Blaze. So Meteor uses its own templating engine. The engine itself is called Blaze, and that is kind of equivalent to Angular or React. And then it has a template language, which is called Spacebars. Spacebars is based on and is similar to Handlebars, which is built on top of Mustache. That piece can be a little bit confusing, but the old Handlebars documentation is pretty clear, and if you can't find the answers that you're looking for, you can find them in the Handlebars documentation. Otherwise, we have a fairly basic templating syntax. It's very HTML-ish, which is nice, especially for front-end developers who are kind of new to this sort of dynamic thing. But to declare a template, we have a template tag. It has a name. It has a unique tag inside of it, and then if we have variables, they are going to be wrapped in these double curly braces. You can see in this case we have one word and then a space and then we have the other word. This is in fact a function that has been passed, and this is the value passed to that function in order to generate whatever is going to be in that part of the page. We won't get into that too deeply today. Mostly we're going to be talking about just passing variables inside of Spacebar's templates. We'll also talk about conditionals and each else and or if else and each. Anyway, yeah, so where should we go now? Let's go to the code. Okay, so let's start filling out templates. You may remember that this first page that I have here called layout base, this is going to be in the DOM right under the body tag. It's meant to be used for all different pages, or at least several different pages, so that they can update different sections automatically. So let's start with template and its name. I like naming them the same as the file with the type and an identifier. And then we have a header, which has a class. Might as well be main header. And then inside of it here, it's going to say header goes here, or more specifically, header content goes here. And then we're going to have a div, class, main, and then pages go here. Okay, so when we wire this application up, we're going to have header content that goes in here all the time, and then we're going to have page content that goes in here. Simple enough. Oh my goodness, go away, Toshiba. My goodness. Okay, let's move on to the next template. So we've got page home now. Now, this is going to go, when we route to this page, this is going to go inside of this main container. So template name equals page home. And then we're going to have an ordered list in there, and we're going to have list items inside of that. Those are going to be dynamically generated, but just for a placeholder, category listing goes here. Then we're going to have a header. That's going to be named template name equals block header. Going to have a div where the class is logo, and instead of a image logo, we're going to go old school, and we're going to do div class equals user, and this is going to be a place where a user can log in and log out. But until we get that dynamic functionality in there, let's just call it logout. Okay, and then our fourth template is going to be block listing, wherein we're actually going to duplicate a list item here based on the data that we have. So template name equals block listing, and then we're going to do the list item inside of the template this time around. Div class count. Then we're going to have some spans inside of that div. Icon. An icon's going to go here. and then total is going to go here. Count, really, since that's what we named it in the data model. And then we're going to have a button, which we'll give the class button, and the unique class +1, because that is precisely what the button is going to do. And then we have a div, which is going to be class progress wrap, and then a div inside that equals progress insert. And I'm going to break the rules here a little bit. Style width equals 50%. Okay, and the reason why I'm using inline styles here is because I want to use the same methods to update both these elements that correlate to something directly in the database and these elements that we're going to be modifying the styles of based on data that we have. This is one of them, and this is a good place to do it. Otherwise, I'm going to have the same thing happening in two different places, more or less, which I can talk about a little bit further if we get there. But for now, trust me, it's okay. We can do it this time. Now, we have gotten through all of the templates that we have. I'm going to make sure everything's saved, and we'll pop open here. You can see as I've been modifying the client, it's been refreshing. Meteor does hot code pushes, so the changes that you make are available automatically. Sometimes those can be a little bit funky, but if I refresh the view, we can see that in fact none of this HTML that I've written is in the view, and that's because it's available in templates, right? Template.page home, that's a thing, but it's not available yet in the view because we haven't told Meteor to put it there. There are a couple ways to do that, one of which can be to so if I go .render, blaze.render, so I could call the blaze render function, or the blaze render method, rather. Select a template, select a parent node, and then it will render that HTML to that parent node. Or alternatively, I can also render with data. So I select a template, send it a context with some variables in it, and give it a parent node, and then voila, it shows up in the DOM. But what I really want to do, and probably what you want to do too in most cases, will be to just utilize a good old-fashioned router. In order to do that, we're going to go to Meteor's package manager, atmosphere.js, and we're going to search for a package called Iron Router. Little known fact, Iron Router was designed by two separate people. They had two separate packages. They were sort of competing to be the de facto router for Meteor. They joined forces, and now they just are the de facto router for Meteor, and they've got 500,000 downloads on their package. Plus, we're going to add it to ours. So, in order to add a package to Meteor, I'm going to have to terminate the server real quick, and then I'll run Meteor add Iron Router. All right. So some of you who have used Symfony or Laravel or Ruby or a lot of other MVC frameworks are going to be pretty familiar with the routing sort of syntax here. All right. So I'm going to start Meteor up again, and we're going to pop into our code again. Okay, so you'll see that I have the router in this lib folder, which runs on both the client and the server. The lib folder is, in fact, or the router file can, in fact, work for server-side routing and client-side routing. I've used it for both, and it's fantastic, both within the same file. So just to keep things simple, we're going to do router.route, and a robust application would have many of these. This is just going to be the base route, so the base URL and then a slash at the end. And then we're going to have a callback function when that route is called. And then here we go. So within a router.route, this keyword is an instance of router. So if I go this.render, and then I select the name of a template, let's say page home. Then you will see that I swear you will. One day you will. Yes, you will see that page home in fact shows us the contents that we put on the first page that we put inside of this page home template for now. Okay. But we actually don't want to do that because we have this super fancy layout base, and we need content to go both in the main header and in the content area based on which route it is, and that could change every time per route. So we're going to add this .layout base, and then so that obviously selects whichever template as the base layout, and then we're going to do this .render page home, but we're going to add an object literal to content, and then we're going to duplicate that. In fact, do block header to to header. Oh, there we go. Done it. I've done it. Okay. So now we can go back to layout base, and you might be wondering, where does this header come from? Where does this content come from? We haven't seen those words on their own yet. So, as a matter of fact, we will replace this placeholder text with yield header. And then voila, we have the header area. And then we're going to do the same thing, and this will be the content area, right? And then we're gonna check our server real quick. Meteor server is successfully restarted after making those changes, and check it out. Oh, look at that. That's pretty much the app. Great. So we now have a router. It's working, and we could expand that if we wanted to, but I think you get it. If you don't, questions? Anything? Nothing? No questions? My goodness. Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about controllers a little bit. Who's familiar with MVC frameworks? Show of hands. Okay, most everyone. So for those who aren't familiar, model view controller in the context of Meteor means that we have a model, which is essentially the database and the data that we put in it. The view, which is the templates that we have here, and the controller, which is going to be a JavaScript file that manipulates what happens inside of the template's HTML and passes it its data. It passes the template data sometimes. Excuse me. Okay. Great. So, there are a couple of components to controllers inside of Meteor. We can select an template and we can add helpers to it. So we can do template.layout_base.helpers, which is a function, or a method rather, and we'll accept an associative array of functions to be added to the template, to be used by the template as it's generating data. And then we can also add, so an example of that would be, well, we'll get some examples soon. Then we can also add events. Template.layout layout base.events, which is sort of the same structure, except in this case, we do an event type and a selector, and then function, and then we can pass an event, and we can pass the template instance, which we'll learn a little bit more about later. And then that would be that. So this is the majority of the functionality of the application. And in fact, layout_base.html is going to be stateless, so we don't need to write any JavaScript for that. One thing that we will do is add a helper that's going to be global everywhere. And that is going to be a helper called isLoggedIn. So any template will be able to use the isLoggedIn helper, and we'll be able to get a true or false value based on whether or not the user is logged in. And we do that by using UI.registerHelper. IsLoggedIn will be the name of the helper, with a capital I, please. And then function. And then we're going to return Meteor.user ID. If any of you are not familiar with the essentially this is going to return a string. If I add a not, it will return false if there is a string there, and true if there's not a string there, and then we just want to reverse that. So essentially by adding a not, I'm casting whatever the output of this is to a Boolean, so it will return true or false instead of returning a string or not a string. Yeah. Great. So that's going to be available everywhere. Now, we're also going to need to add some dynamic functionality for our home page. As you can see, this is not acceptable. This is not dynamic. So I'm going to split this vertically, keep it easy, and actually I'm going to clean this up a little bit so we can work a little bit faster, shall we? Oh my goodness. That's the easy way to do it. Great. Okay, so inside of pagehome.js, we want to do template.pagehome, of course, .helpers, and then one helper we're going to want inside of this template is going to be categories, because we need to know how many categories there are. So, in order to pass categories to this template called pagehome, we're going to return, and then we're just going to go straight to the database. db.categories.find.fetch. And this is actually going to be queuing information from a local copy of the database in an engine called MiniMongo. Meteor keeps a copy in a standard Mongo instance on the server, but it also keeps a copy up to date, in sync, changing all the time as any changes get made to the server version of the database, that allows a user to quickly access data and makes changes locally, even if they don't get synced with the server. There's a lot more to say about that, but simply put, this is actually getting its information from the client right now instead of doing a database hit. Okay, so, and that is going to get category records from local version of database. Easy. Okay, so inside of the template itself, we're going to want to get rid of this. And then we're going to want to do, we're going to want to use the each helper, right? And this is just essentially a loop. It's going to loop through for each category that is returned by this array. Block listing. So you might have noticed before, but when you add this caret right here, we're actually referencing a template. This is the block listing template that we're going to be inserting into this page for every category that exists. And then we have to close our conditionals and some of our helpers in here. Okay, so we've got each. Now, we may also want to go a little bit further and say, since we already have the categories right here, and we know that we're going to want the data from each of those categories to display information inside of the block listing template, then we might as well just pass the version that we have right now to the template so that we don't have to request it again, even though it's coming from the local system. It just feels cleaner. It also makes block listing a more reusable component. So in order to do this, we say, okay, so block listing is going to get an attribute called category, right? The data that we put at the other end of this equal sign is going to be available inside of the block listing template under the keyword category. And since we're already looping through categories, we can select the instance that's currently being looped right now using this keyword. Easy enough. All right. Something else we're going to want to do is just for fun, we're going to do a conditional if categories, just in case there aren't any in the system at all. We're going to close that, and then we're going to add an else, which you'll see is a little bit different from the ifs because it goes between them, it doesn't have to be closed, and it doesn't have to start with this hash. And then that's just going to be a div class warning. And then an h1 inside of it. Oh no! And then a p. It looks like there are no drinks to be drunk. And that's sad. Okay, great. So that's one template, and there's a lot covered sort of inside of that. We have a couple more to go through. Any questions at the moment? Okay, great. So let's go to the header. The header is a little bit different. You can get rid of that. Blockheader.js as well would be nice, and then we'll go there and get rid of that. Header's a little bit different. The header is going to require integration with the accounts interface that we have yet to build. Fortunately, we won't have to build an accounts interface because Meteor comes with an accounts package, which encrypts with bcrypt, and let's see, it's going to be easier if I just head down here. Yeah, okay. Okay. There we go. And I'll be able to use a base package called accounts base, And then on top of that, I can use accounts password, or I can use accounts Facebook or GitHub or Google or Twitter or Meetup or any of these to authenticate users, or several of them if I want to. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to use accounts password. And in addition to that, just to get you up and running, Meteor also adds a really, really easy interface for login buttons. So this is the accounts UI package. You can get it styled or unstyled. I'm going to go with the styled version, and it basically gives us a way for a user to completely sign up, register, reset their password, verify their email, which we're not going to require in this version of the application, but you certainly can really easily, and then sign in later on, and then have full blocking control of what that user sees. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to head over to the server, and we're going to want to Meteor add accounts base, that initial package that makes it all possible. And then we're going to want to add accounts password. Uh-oh. Okay. Derp. Great. And then we're going to want to add great. Selecting package versions, blah, blah, blah. Great. Simple templates to add login widgets to an app. Fantastic. Now I've integrated accounts with Meteor all of the ways. The login buttons is the easiest at first. If you move into a production app, you're certainly going to want to have your own interface for that, which maybe takes another hour or two, but is super simple compared to conventional means of user authentication. And look at that, we've actually killed our server, so we're going to have to run that again. Okay, heading back to the app. Here in the header view, we have a logout button that currently does nothing. We would actually like that logout button to actually log the user out. But we also first need a way for the user to log in. So we're going to say if is logged in, right? You recall we created that as a global helper to be used in all templates to detect if the user is logged in or not. I'll pop back over to that real quick just so you can see. Meteor gives us this user ID functionality everywhere, even on the server when the user makes a request, which is super handy. It's a really easy one-line way to just see if the user is logged in at all. So if the user is logged in, they can log out. Else, what we're going to do is show them login buttons. There we go. And we can see what that looks like real quick. Right here. Voila. We've got kind of an ugly app going right now. It doesn't really do much, but we can click sign in. Uh-oh. We can click sign in. It opens this interface. I'm not found, so I'm going to create an account. Fortunately, all of my information is saved already. dom@pixelonline.com. Look at that. I can sign out if I want to. Great. So we have a little bit more functionality to add to the application inside of the block header. Oh, and you know what? We screwed this up right here, didn't we? That's right. That's right. Uh-huh. I'll sign in. I'll sign in. And in fact, that's what I wanted, a log out button. I didn't want to have to open the accounts UI interface again. That was not in my design, sir. So we're going to have template.blockHeader.events, and then click.logout. It's going to be a function where we can get the event and the template instance, and we can say when that happens, Meteor.logout. Simple enough. Updating the view. All right, sign in and log out. Great. Okay, that was easy enough. And then we've got blocklisting.js and blocklisting.html. Okay. So, inside of this listing, oh, I need to give this a class name. Inside of this listing, we have various pieces of data that need to be filled in with actual data. We're probably running out of time here, so I'm going to try to hurry this up a little bit. We're going to start with the helper in block listing, which is template.blocklisting.helpers. Now, actually, you may remember we passed down from page home a variable called category based on that particular index and inside of the categories array. So we should have a category just hanging out here in this template without us having to add a helper. So what I'm going to do is with category, meaning if category exists and is not false and is not an empty array or an empty object or 0 or an empty string, what I want to do is view this content. Not only that, but inside of this content, I want to be able to access the contents of category a level down. So each category had a count property. Now that I'm doing this with category, I can just add the count just like that. An icon is going to go here. We'll go through that in a little moment. This is going to be an action. As a matter of fact, this is going to be an action that's only available if the user is logged in. So if is logged in. Okay. Great. And then this is going to be dynamic functionality. So what I want to do with this guy is I want to have this progress bar that's hanging out here. I want this guy to be proportionate to the amount of the count that it has versus the count between all of the different categories, which will make more sense after I put it together and show you what that code looks like. So the total percent is going to equal function var template equals template.instance. Using the instance method of template, it gives you the current instance of the template that you're using, which means that the category variable that we're passing into this block listing template, whichever instance of block listing this actually is, we get that category and we get to drop it right here. We get to access that data right here. So var category equals template.data.category. Great. And then var all categories, because we want to compare them, is db.categories.find.fetch. And then we have var total count equals 0. And then we're going to loop through is less than all categories dot length I plus plus. Don't go too crazy there. Total count plus equals all categories I dot count. Then we've got if 0 is equal to total count, then we're going to return 0%. And then if not, then it's going to keep on executing here. And category.count divided by total count times 100, because that's already as a percentage, plus %, so that CSS can understand it. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're getting the template so that we can get the category, and then we're getting all of the categories, and then we're just setting this variable here to start, and then we're going to loop through all of the categories and increment this total count variable so that we can see when we're done, when we add all of the counts of all of the categories together, what is the total going to be? And if that total is 0, then we don't want the progress bars to fill up all the way. We want them to be just empty. Otherwise, we want to deliver category.count, the count from our current category, divided by the total count, what proportion is it, times 100, and then the % sign, which this part is really just transforming the data so it can be visible, be understandable by CSS. Okay, so those are all even right now, which means that we need to accept user input. Oh, you know what? We forgot a little bit of this HTML element too. Div class equals label. We want a label here. Oh, and of course, we want to add total % here. And just so you know, these variables are better off inside of attributes than they are outside of attributes, or inside of HTML is fine too. That doesn't feel broken to me. I think that's acceptable. Okay. So we have label here. Yes. Let's just check where we're at with the code. Okay, so the total is 0. It goes to 0. We still have this icon goes here thing. We're going to clean that up real quick by going to atmosphere. We're going to search packages for font awesome, and then since this package is created by the people font awesome, I will use their package font awesome because I trust them, because their name is font awesome. Meteor add font awesome, font awesome. Oh, stupid. Meteor add font awesome, font awesome. Bam. Oh, come on now. What am I even doing here? Okay, sometimes it's just best to copy this. I don't know. I don't know, people. Great. That is a lot better. So, getting back into the code, we know that from collections we inserted Bolt, coffee, beer. These happen to correspond to font awesome icons. Therefore, that's what we'll use. So, block listing gets nothing in there but FA, and then FA dash, and we'll insert our icon variable. And so the output will be FA dash bolt as a class. And that will insert a vector icon. Thanks to font awesome. Freaking awesome. Okay. Let's run Meteor again. And let's get the show on the road because we're running out of time. Okay. So, do we have any questions so far? Okay, let's try to get through to the end. Actually, let's see where we're at on time. 1 hour and 7 minutes. Nice. Okay. So, in Meteor, there are two ways to get data. One of them is to get that data directly from your database copy, right? The other way to do it is to use meteor.methods. And with meteor.methods, it's a lot like a typical API call, except you're just using JavaScript code, and it's calling that JavaScript code based on a name instead of actually doing an HTTP request. Well, it is doing an HTTP request, but it's doing it in the background, so you don't have to worry about it. Actually, it might be going over WebSocket. Let's not dig into that too much. So we have meteor.methods, and I'm putting this inside of the server, so this is protected, trusted code. And then this will also accept an associative array, and then we're going to be able to add increment beverage count function. And then we want a category ID so that we know which category's beverage count we can update. And then if meteor.user ID, if the user is logged in, db.categories.update, where the ID of the document is equal to category ID, and what we're going to want to do is increment, for good reason, count by 1. Okay. So the reason I used increment, as many of you might know, But the reason I used increment instead of just resetting the count to whatever count was plus 1 is because A, increment's probably going to be a little bit more efficient, and B, it's perfectly possible that you're going to have 2 users submitting this same request at the exact same time. And if you receive, overwrite, and then update the document, then one user's action is going to override the other user's action, or 20 users' actions. You can't really know. It's a time thing. Anyway, so we're incrementing so that on the server side, it can understand that it really just needs to go up. It doesn't matter what the value is at the time that the database hit actually happens. Okay, so that's what's going to happen if we call increment beverage count. Now, in order to access that function, we're going to do template.blocklisting.events, and then we're going to pop this guy open, and when you click the +1 element, that button that we have there, you're going to get function, and that is going to be passed the event as usual. And the template instance, so that you don't even have to call template.instance. It already knows which template instance it's in. Why they didn't figure that out with helpers beats me. Okay. So then we'll do the var category ID equals template.data.category _ID. And then we're going to call that function by doing meteor.call. Oh, and I should bring that up, shouldn't I? There we go. Meteor.call. The name of the method, category ID, or any number of arguments that we're actually passing, and then function, and then we're going to have that. Great. Good job, everyone. Okay. And then, so this function, when called, it really is going over the World Wide Web. It really could have issues, so we're going to get an error, or we're going to get a result. If the result happens, we don't really care. We don't have any further actions to take because all of the data is going to update automatically. But if there's an error, the user is not going to have any idea. So we're going to tell them, alert, shoot. Oh, Freudian slip, shoot. We had a problem connecting to the server. Try +1ing. Don't make me. Don't you make me. Again. Did I tell you I didn't get any sleep last night? Okay. Again. Okay. Great. So if there's an issue, that's going to bring up an alert. We're probably not going to demo that. We're just going to trust that it works. Okay, so now we have our interface. It has icons in it. It has zeros. It has energy drinks drank and cups of coffee sipped and all sorts of crazy cool stuff, and it's got a sign in guy, and we've already created a user account, so we can just click sign in, right? Now we can see buttons. Since we signed in, we can press 1. That's going to increment them. Remember, this bar fills up relative to its proportion to all of the counts of all of the categories. So if I hit this, it's going to be 50% between the two. If I hit this, it's going to be 60 or 66-33. And then we can just make things go crazy, and we can add as much as we want. Fantastic. Okay, let's see where we're at on time. Okay, we are hosed on time. So let's keep going just for fun, because this isn't actually something that we're doing in front of everybody. Okay, I'm going to talk real quick about security. The reason that we did meteor.methods up here is because we don't want to have users being able to update on the front end anytime that they want to. Because right here, users, right here I would be able to db.categories.find, and then I can find one, and then I can steal this ID, and then I can go db.categories.update, and then I can just pass the ID, actually. I don't actually have to throw in a literal when I have the ID. And then I could say, hey, I want to set that label property to Dom's a poop face because I don't like him. Now I've done it. And now everybody that's using the app can see that. That's a problem. You don't want your users to be able to do that, especially if you're not really a poop face. So let's change that back real quick. Energy, drinks, drank. And let's look at Meteor. So Meteor adds, when we go Meteor list, Meteor adds a package called insecure and a package called auto publish. Right. So those are made for development modes. They're good and fun, but when you want to get something into production, they're not safe. So Meteor remove auto publish. Okay. Meteor remove insecure. Great. Now, we've got Bev++, right? We've removed insecure, we've removed auto publish. Now we can open our app again, and then we're going to get a really nasty surprise that none of you expected and none of you want to have to deal with, but we're going to have to deal with it anyway. And that nasty surprise is that none of our data works now. Bam! Oh no! Great. So what we're going to need to do is actually tell the server, hey man, I want to share that database across to the client. And then the client's going to have to say, hey server, I want to get that data. And that way, we'll add a level of security, and we'll be able to deny the user the ability to have full control over what actually happens in the database. So we're going to do this inside the collections array. If Meteor.isClient, we get this fancy conditional. So if this is running on the client, we're going to say Meteor.subscribe, and that's just going to subscribe to categories. And then if Meteor.isServer, we're going to do Meteor.publish, send it to the client, categories. And when we do that, we're going to call a function that returns db.categories.find. And if we wanted to, we could even modify sensitive data out of this and only deliver to the user the information that is relevant to them or that they should be able to access all the time anyway. And the data doesn't even have to be sensitive. We might even want to parse something out just because it's a log of events or because it's just the kind of information that isn't going to be relevant to the user at all and is only going to drag down the user experience by adding too much data to the front end. User activity logs are another thing. You might only publish the user activity logs that are relevant to that user instead of publishing all of the user activity logs from the entire system. So now that we've added these two things, we are going to be able to view data in the user interface, right? Just as it was before. And actually, I didn't need to hit refresh there, but I did anyway, and now I regret it. Okay, well, we're back, whatever. So now we can view, and we can still update here, but you'll see that we can no longer update here where I say Dom's poopy face. Access denied. Sad. Take that, Vandal. Okay. So now that we've done that, and by the way, we can also do db.categories.allow and add in here different rules like insert function user ID doc. And within this function, we can actually say, well, hey, if the user ID is this, then allow the user to insert into the categories collection. Or if the user ID matches the owner ID on the doc in MongoDB, then let the user insert one. Or I guess that would be more relevant to update, which actually gives you a few more methods. This and much, much more is available inside of the Meteor documentation. I've also created a handout, which you can find on Lanyard. It's called Up in Hours, Building Apps Quickly with JavaScript in Meteor. And if you go to Lanyard, Boise Code Camp 2016, and you find this talk by Dom Ramirez, which is my name. There, that's fine. And Meteor, yes. Go on Meteor, Up in Hours. Actually, here's a handout. There it is. Bam. And then that just links straight to the document. And you have the GitHub repository from this app that I've created. It has a couple of extra features. Here's some recommended documentation, a little bit about the Iron Router package, a lot about security, a good amount about deployment, monitoring, and more. And just because I said I would, I'm going to do Meteor deploy easy test bev ++.meteor.com. And then that's going to deploy. I should also add, you can export from Meteor both a Cordova Android and a Cordova iOS version. Ugh. I don't know what my username is. Oh, goodness. Oh, okay. I bet I can do this. Great. Okay, we're deploying. Once deployed, you'll be able to browse to easytestbev++.meteor.com, and you'll be able to use the application. While it's deploying, I'll talk about the Cordova versions a little bit. Who's familiar with Cordova? Okay. Great. So Cordova is a hybrid application wrapper. You can take HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, drop it into Cordova, and it will be available in a native package downloadable from the App Store on both Android and iOS. Meteor has support for Cordova platforms. You can add them via command line. You can export your built app that is just prepared to go into the App Store. It's relatively complex, and if you haven't done Cordova before, you'll have a few things to learn about configuring it and setting up testing and all of that fun stuff. But there are a lot of really good articles on that on the Meteor Meteor website, in the Meteor documentation, and you'll see some references to that in the handout that I just shared with everybody.